Funny how the loudest debates today skip over the one doctrine that shaped an entire hemisphere. Almost as if people know it still matters, but acknowledging it would force them to confront truths they would rather avoid. That is where the story begins. In the middle of a contradiction, the modern world tiptoes around. In the early 19th century, the United States was not a titan. It was a young republic surrounded by empires that had spent centuries slicing continents into trophies. Yet in 1823, James Monroe delivered a message so blunt, so unapologetically clear, that it froze European ambitions in place. It was not a polite request. It was not a diplomatic suggestion. It was a boundary drawn with the confidence of a nation that understood the cost of hesitation. Europe stays out of the Americas, full stop. What made this declaration extraordinary was not bravado, it was clarity. Monroe recognized something leaders often pretend not to understand today. Deterrence is not aggression. Deterrence is boundaries, and boundaries only work when they are unmistakable. At the time, European powers were circling the newly independent nations of Latin America, hoping to reclaim influence. Monroe's message cut through the noise. The Western Hemisphere was no longer a playground for old empires. Any attempt to interfere would be treated as a hostile act. The brilliance was not in the wording, it was in the resolve behind it. The United States was not yet a military giant, but it projected something far more powerful: certainty. The doctrine worked because nobody wanted to test it. Britain, for its own strategic reasons, quietly supported the policy, using its navy to discourage European adventurism. European empires, exhausted from decades of war, understood that challenge in the United States and its own hemisphere would be costly and unpredictable. Monroe's administration spoke with a unity that made the warning credible. Deterrence is not volume, it is consequence. Monroe made the consequences obvious. Yet today, the Monroe Doctrine is treated like an outdated relic, not because it failed, but because it contradicts the modern habit of pretending that power, influence, and national boundaries no longer matter. Contemporary discourse prefers soft language, shared responsibility, global cooperation, multilateral engagement. These phrases sound noble, but they collapse the moment a determined adversary decides to test them. The uncomfortable truth is that peace in the Western Hemisphere was not maintained by wishful thinking. It was maintained by a clear rule backed by a nation willing to enforce it. When deterrence disappears, vacuums appear, and vacuums attract foreign intelligence networks, hostile economic leverage, proxy conflicts, and ideological infiltration. Monroe understood this long before the modern world invented new vocabulary to avoid saying it. If the United States does not define the rules in its own hemisphere, someone else will. That principle has not changed. Only the willingness to say it out loud has. Reintroducing the Monroe Doctrine today would not mean isolationism or imperialism. It would mean clarity, the same clarity that kept the hemisphere stable for generations. It would mean acknowledging that the United States is both the right and the responsibility to protect its immediate sphere from hostile influence. Every major civilization in history has done this. The only difference is that America is told it should feel guilty for doing what every other power considers basic self-preservation. James Monroe's warning was not a relic of 1823. It was a statement about geopolitical physics. Boundaries matter. Deterrence matters. And ignoring these truths does not erase them.